Well, I've been doing a lot of preparation for the NFL draft because I'm going to be up there from Wednesday through Saturday with Jerry Kramer. And we have several events planned, both with some events the Packers have planned for Jerry and
Mhm.
also some events that the Pro Football Hall of Fame have for Jerry.
Okay.
So we're going to be quite busy, but it's going to be a lot of fun. 250,000 people in town with a little over 100,000 people population
I'm
wise.
just so surprised that the draft draws that many people. Is it just the rabidness of the fans?
Well, I think since they've made it, instead of just having it in a studio or
Mhm.
things of that nature like they did in the past,
Sure.
and I've been a draft geek. I've been watching the draft since the early 80s with Chris Berman on
Yeah.
ESPN
Yeah.
and now that NFL Network has joined in with those folks who do a great job, like Rich Eisen.
Hmm.
I just love it. But anyway, I don't know what the situation is. I know they somebody said that they drew over 700,000 fans in Detroit last year,
Good
which
Lord.
is that's a bigger city, obviously. But I mean, even 250,000 in Green Bay will be fantastic. And the thing about it is the Packers have prepared for this draft for many years with the Titletown district they've done
Yeah.
and the other things they've done, the atrium, the expansion they did with the atrium, they just keep improving it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great campus for the draft. I think the fans will love it. And the other thing is, like we may have talked the last time, the Lambeau Field is considered like it's on a lot of people's bucket list
Yeah.
in
I
terms of
know. Yeah.
fans that aren't maybe in Wisconsin, or even they don't even have to be Packer fans. They can be just pro football fans
Right.
because of the history of the NFL and knowing what's all happened at that stadium and all the things the Packers have there now with their own Hall of Fame there and the restaurants
Yeah. It's
and all the
complete. I
other
mean,
stuff.
compared to 20 years ago, when
Yeah.
even, when Lee Remmel first credentialed me, I went up there and it was just that old bowl and, not a lot of hotels. And it's kind of like what Pfizer was done in a way, but I love the atrium. I think you're right. It is a bucket list kind of thing. And, we kind of take it for granted, I think, but, it is a destination. And so are they going to be, you said the campus, are they going to be like screens outside? And where is it at where is it being held specifically? The
From
draft.
what I understand, it's going to be in like the parking lot
Okay.
of Lambeau with the football field will be behind the stage, so you'll be able to see the football field. I think they're gonna shoot it from like Oneida,
Oh, okay.
that area
Yeah.
pointing towards the stadium, towards Ridge Road, I guess it's called. And so it's going to be interesting. Um, I don't know how often I'm going to be able to get to the draft area because I'll be doing so many things with
Yeah.
Jerry at these various places. But I'm hoping to get out there and just walk through the crowd a little bit, get a flavor of what the fans are experiencing. And as you know from watching drafts in the past, I mean, people just they dressed extravagantly with
Yeah.
this stuff, their team colors and all the other stuff they do. So it should be a great time. I'm really looking forward to it.
So, we talked last time about your book about Jerry. What is he like as a guy, that not in interviews? What's he like, as a just a guy when you're hanging out?
Well, that's one of the things that cut the ice when I first got to talk to him. Um, he's like almost like a second father,
Yeah,
favorite uncle type of guy. I mean, we just shoot the breeze
yeah,
like I would with my own dad
right.
when he was around
That's
and things of
special.
that nature. And we just have a great niche between us. And again, we'll talk about family, weather,
Yeah.
uh, the other things in the NFL. What do you think about the Super Bowl? What do you
Yeah.
think about this and that? So it's just a very just a friendly conversation where sometimes he'll call out of the blue and
Yeah.
or I'll call him out of the blue. It's not really out of the blue anymore because we probably talk 3 or 4 times a week.
Jeez.
Just talked to him last night, as a
That's
matter
just
of
like a
fact.
great friend. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you hit it off, you spoke the same language, and that's special when you can find somebody that, and no matter what, in any walk of life that you have, that yours just happens to be a Hall of Fame football player.
Well, and then the other thing is, speaking of the thing that sort of coincides with the draft, or it's very apropos, Jerry was part of the greatest draft ever by the Packers in 1958 when
Wow.
he was selected along with Ray Nitschke and Jim Taylor. And so they got three Hall of Famers in that one draft in 1958, which actually back in those days, Jim, the draft was staggered. They actually had two parts of the draft. The first four rounds were actually in 1957, December of 1957, rounds one through four. And then in January of 58, they did rounds 5 through 30. There were 30 rounds back then, Jim, not
How many are there
seven, not
now?
12,
How many now?
seven.
Okay,
Yeah,
rough.
so I mean, they had 30 rounds back then. Now, of course, they only had 12 or 14 teams
Yeah,
back when Jerry played for the most part until expansion came.
yeah,
But now we're what, up to 30 plus, whatever it is, 32.
yeah.
Uh, so makes things a little different, but um, just the fact that he was part of the greatest draft class,
Yeah,
and of course, he hears that all the time from
yeah.
fans. People, now that Ray Nitschke's passed, and by the way, when I wrote for Packer Report, I was so proud to do that because that was the publication Ray founded. And but he was like the ambassador, and then Fuzzy Thurston, all those guys, Bart Starr. Now Jerry's like one of the last remaining from the Lombardi era, and he's truly the ambassador right now of those teams, along with Dave Robinson and when Boyd Dollar's around, guys like that. But Jerry seems to be at just about every event in Green Bay, it seems like every year,
That's
whether
great.
it's alumni weekend or some other events like the Boys and Girls Club
Yeah,
of Door County event that we go to every year in August. So it's just he's just a great guy. Bottom
yeah.
line, if you ever get to talk to him, I think you'll get the same
Live.
reaction
Yeah.
vibe. Yep.
What year did Lombardi get to the Packers?
Lombardi arrived in 1959.
So a year after he was drafted, a year
A
after.
year after he was drafted. And the thing about it is, and I've written about this, Coach Lombardi was actually not the first choice of the Packers. They wanted to go with this coach named Evicheski from the University of Iowa. They had won a national championship there, and their quarterback was a guy by the name of Randy Duncan. And like I said, they staggered the draft in 59 to where the first part was in December, and Lombardi hadn't even been hired yet. He got hired in January. So the Packers did the draft in 59 without Lombardi even being there. And their first draft pick was Randy Duncan from Iowa. So
Mhm,
everybody was going, oh, now it's going to be Evicheski for sure. I
mhm.
mean, they just drafted his quarterback, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And Jack Venezi, who is their scout that got so many great players in the 50s for the Packers to draft, including 8 Hall of Famers, including Jerry,
Mhm.
he talked to people like George Halas and Paul Brown and folks of that nature, Sid Gilman, and they talked about this guy who was the offensive coordinator for the Giants named Lombardi. And so he talked to Lombardi, and Lombardi said he was looking for a job.
Hmm.
So Jack Venezi basically came to the board of the directors and said, I think we ought to talk to Lombardi. I think he's the guy we should hire. And then they
Wow.
talked to him. And not only, and that was his first head coaching job that he ever gotten in his life. He had been a head coach in high school, but he had never been a head coach in college or the pros. So not only did they give him the head coaching job, they let him become general manager as well.
That must have been unique. And though, did he go to Furman?
He went to Fordham.
I was
Fordham, and
close. I was close.
anyway, it was close.
But in those days, who made the selections in those days?
Of the Packers.
Any team, the head coach.
Well, usually with the Packers, because they were sort of unique because they were community owned, they just had a board of directors, and Olenichek was a president, and he was the one who made the ultimate hire of Lombardi.
Right.
Uh, so it was interesting how it all worked out. But he told the board of directors, he says, "This is my team. I don't want any interference.
Wow.
I don't, in fact, one time Olenichek came down to a meeting Coach Lombardi was having with the team, and he kicked him out of the room. He says, I don't ever want you coming into one of my meetings with my players.
Right.
We'll talk in your office about this and that, but I don't want you coming here in the locker room. This is my team. I'm going to run it my way. And obviously, in '59, the Packers were 7-5, their first winning season since 1947.
Wow.
So they learned pretty quickly that this guy wasn't messing around. And then within 2 seasons, they won the NFL championship in 1961.
Did you read David Moranis's book?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing. I thought it was very well written, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
I wasn't even, if anybody doesn't know, it's When Pride Still Mattered. I didn't, I have actually asked David to come on the channel. I think he's politely declining. But he'll do it when when you and I and Johnny get big. I think that, I just never really, from Chicago, and I know that's unfortunate. But what I just am amazed at how people get so excited about drafts. I get it a little more than I used to, but just the fervor, around the country. I don't think it's just Green Bay. Do you? I mean, this is popular, and the NFL. I mean, it's such a lucrative business right now. And when you think Bob Harlan told me that back in the day, the Packers were in serious jeopardy in the before they played Milwaukee games. And he told me that Bud Selig in Milwaukee County Stadium essentially saved the Packers. Is that what you understand? That's what Bob Harlan told me. So I don't know.
Right. Well, the Packers started playing games in Milwaukee starting in 1933.
Oh, I didn't
And
know it was that far back.
yeah, they played at Borchert Field, and they also played at State Fair Park, believe it or
Oh, I
not.
do remember that. Yeah.
And that, in fact, the 1939 championship game was played at State Fair Park in West Dallas. My dad was there, as was my grandfather. So they witnessed that game. I think there were 27,000 fans there, but anyway, or 32,000, I believe. But when the Braves or the Milwaukee built County Stadium in '53, that became the place for Milwaukee fans
Yeah.
and then we're talking 40, 50,000 at each game. But
Yeah.
it wasn't until, like you said, Bud Selig, and the support he gave the Packers, he ended up being on the board of directors for a while himself, believe it or not, with the Packers. But anyway, it wasn't until 1960 that the Packers had sellouts at both New City Stadium, which is now Lambeau Field, and County Stadium. And so pretty much the whole Lombardi era were all sellouts, and that's why you got this waiting list now of
I know.
season ticket holders.
It's amazing.
And the best thing that Bob Harlan did once the Packers announced after the 1994 season that they were going to exclusively play all their home games at Lambeau,
Mhm.
he made sure that Milwaukee got at least two of the Milwaukee season ticket holders got at least two of the games in Green Bay. So that's why they have, gold
I
games
was
where,
going to say, wasn't that the gold package?
yes, yes.
I
And
remember
that
it.
was just a great thing that Bob did.
And I
And
think it just broadens the appeal in the state too. I mean, I think it's fair. I don't know if other teams do that. Well, I mean, it's just wonderful that they did make that concession because
right.
Milwaukee was so integral. Of all the drafts you've attended, or at least in person or not, what were some of the shockers of the first round in a good way, and perhaps in a bad way too? You
Well,
know, not just
I would say that I'll give you two examples or one of each. And I've been doing, like I said, I've been writing for Packer Reports since 2001. I've been doing mock drafts for the Packers
Hmm,
since 2002. So and I'm doing another one this year, even though I'm going to be there.
yeah,
But I think the Aaron Rodgers draft was one that excited me,
right.
even though, that was 2005. And up to that point, Brett had been playing the game with the media and the Packers that I'm not sure if I'm going to
Right.
retire or not retire. And he was playing that game towards the end of the year where I think the Packers knew they had to get somebody
Mhm.
in at some point that could replace Brett. And I know Brett didn't really care for the pick when Aaron was selected, but
Mhm.
not only did Ted Thompson select Aaron Rodgers in round one, he selected another guy in round two, Nick Collins, who, had he not been injured, I think was on his way to the Pro Football Hall of Fame himself. He was off to a great start in his career until
Wow.
he had a neck injury. But the one that shocked me the most in terms of being totally ticked off about it was, in fact, in my mock draft, I had the Packers taking TJ Watt in the 2017 NFL draft. And the Packers actually had that opportunity to take TJ Watt. He was still available.
Hometown guy, right? I mean,
They ended up trading back like 4 spots, picked up a cornerback named Kevin King, who was always injury prone, and when he played, he didn't play too well. So that was probably the biggest mistake that Ted Thompson ever had in his career. And that was his last draft, as a matter of fact, because they hired Gutekunst the next year to be the GM. So those are my memories. But I mean, the other one I remember the Tony Mandrich draft in
that's
1989.
one of the few, the big bust.
Yeah, he was, and so many great players that were selected there.
Running
Troy
backs.
Aikman, if the
Yeah,
Packers don't win that game in the last game in 1988, they get the first pick of the draft in 89. They probably picked Troy Aikman. There would be no Brett Favre
that's
if
it.
they had Aikman,
That's it.
so you just never know what
Isn't
happens.
that amazing to imagine that? Why did Rodgers fall so much? Do you have any idea? And was he that? I mean, was he projected to go that low?
No, actually, the funny thing about it is everybody was saying before the draft there's either Rodgers or the other quarterback, can't think of his name right now, who ended up being selected by the 49ers, will be the number one pick of the draft. And Rodgers, being a 49ers fan, is a kid growing up in that area.
Yeah.
He was really hoping he'd be the guy, but for whatever reason, the 49ers passed on him, and then he just kept sliding for whatever reason. And by the way, guess who the offensive coordinator for the 49ers was that year?
I was thinking, I don't want to guess.
All right, Mike McCarthy.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
McCarthy met Rodgers before the
Way back
draft, and they
then.
selected the other guy instead of Rodgers. And
They, so that may be a little bad blood. I don't think Aaron forgot that. A little
no,
about Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't forget being slighted. That's what
oh
I.
no, he
Um,
played with the chip on his shoulder his whole career and still does.
no, he really does. I don't know. Do you think he's done?
I think if he gets to the right team, right now the rumor is he's probably going to try and go to a contender if at all possible, but it looks like he's probably going to end up with the New York Giants.
Hmm.
That way, at least he can stay, where he's living now. He lives in
Yeah.
New Jersey. But the other reason is the Giants were supposedly going to be trading for Matthew Stafford,
Oh,
and then the Rams ended up re-signing him, and so now they've turned their attention on Rodgers,
yeah.
because they know right now. I mean, both the Giants and the Jets, for the hard luck fans of in the Big Apple, they got to be going crazy with those two teams. They used to, especially the Jets. The Jets, they seem like they always seem to go down the drain every year,
Yeah.
it seems like. But the Giants have a proud history, so they that's what I'm hearing, that they want to sign Rodgers. I mean, there's also rumors of him maybe going to Las Vegas
Wow.
or maybe Tennessee. Don't know, but I think, he didn't have a great season last year, but by most standards, most quarterbacks would have taken his stats last year.
Really?
I mean, it's just he's always been a guy who's not prone to throwing interceptions, and last year was no different. A lot of people say, well, he doesn't throw interceptions because he doesn't take chances, but he took plenty of chances when he was quarterback with the Packers. So I
Yeah.
think he still has a little bit left in the tank. He's no Tom Brady. Tom Brady obviously put together some fantastic
He's
years
a
when he was
freak of
close to
nature,
40.
though. I mean, that guy, I don't. A final question, Bob, is who do you see number one for the Packers this year?
Well, right now, if you look at their needs, and I think it's sort of going to play into a couple of things. Right now, free agency starts next week. I
Hmm.
was very happy to see the Packers re-sign their kicker, Brandon McManus, because the kicking game is so key, and the Packers realized that
It
2 years
really
ago
is.
when their rookie missed that field goal against the 49ers
Yeah.
that really put them in a bad spot. But I think, and also wide receiver. which is one of their positions of need. I think it's going to be solved via trade or
Mm.
via free agency. And the two names I keep hearing are former Packer Devontae Adams possibly coming back, or DK Metcalf of the Seattle um, uh, Seahawks. But in terms of what the Packers will do, like in the first round, I think it's going to be one of two positions. It's going to be either a defensive lineman or a cornerback, because
Yeah.
they're probably going to lose Yar Alexander. And so we'll see what happens. But I'm going to be doing a mock draft, as I said. I talk to scouts.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scouts is Chris Landry. I used to write for his site. He
Mm.
gives me a lot of good insight as to what the Packers might be thinking about.
Mm.
And so that I'll put it all together at some point in the next couple of weeks. But I think defensive line, as the Philadelphia Eagles proved in their game against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, if you can put pressure on a quarterback like Mahomes, who
Yeah.
usually has all year to pass,
He does.
but the two Super Bowls he's lost, he was running for his life against the Eagles and the Bucks. And that's what you need to do. You need to create pressure on the quarterback if you're going to be a good team in the NFL. And they've got a great coordinator, the Packers do, and Jeff Hafley. The Packers were fifth in total defense last year, sixth in points allowed. All they need right now is a pass rush, and that would, really improve their pass rush. And I think that would put them over the top, I think, defensively.
Well, I know about 1/100th of football than you do, but I liken that Philadelphia defense to the Bears Super Bowl defense. I
Yep.
just was like, these guys are all over them, and these guys. It's funny when I realize how good that defense was, and when you have to perform on the highest stage, at the highest level, I thought they manhandled them, and I know next to nothing about this
No,
game.
no, you're exactly right. I used to get criticized by my buddies because I became a fan of the 85 Bears.
Oh
I
yeah.
just like the way they played.
Was a hell of a defense, and the offense was pretty good too. It's such a shame Peyton did not get a touchdown in that game. I mean,
Oh,
he
yeah,
was
that
the
was
team, every day for the last, however long he was with him, and that he didn't get that. But all right, Bob, we'll catch up soon.
very good.
And
Always a pleasure, Jim.
it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks, Bob.